You're listening to Cars and Coffee, your local home for IndyCar, Formula One, and sports car racing news.
Here on 91.3 WHJE.
And now, here's your host, Nathan Ward.
Good morning, and welcome back to Cars and Coffee here on 91.3 WHJE. My name is Nathan Ward. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to do a show last week, but I'm back now, and we have a lot to talk about over the last couple weeks. There's been some interesting developments in terms of the IndyCar schedule, and also some sports car news from the other side of the world. So that's what we're going to talk about today. But before we do that, I want to remind everyone on how to get in touch with the show.
Want to get in touch with the show? Head over to the Cars and Coffee Instagram page at carsandcoffee_WHJE and send us a message. That's at carsandcoffee_WHJE. I'll try to answer as many messages as possible.
Just as it said, head over to the Instagram if you want to get in touch with the show. I'm always looking for new guests for new stories to share here on the station. If you didn't notice, if you live in Carmel, Automobilia was yesterday, which it's honestly pretty hard to notice because the entire city is closed and lined with really cool-looking cars. There was a lot of cool stuff there. Gator Motorsports, the only Lotus dealer in Indiana, basically packed Midtown with every single type of Lotus, like mid-size Lotus sports car you could ever want. Like all the wing options, all the colors. It was super cool to see that much of one car, but they all looked so different from each other. Whether that be whatever wrap or paint job they had on, or whatever wing option they had. Like they had several different modifications to each of them. They all looked unique, and I liked that. The Lotus Evora is an incredibly small car, and I always forget that, but it's a super cool car. Also, one of the super interesting things I saw at Automobilia was a 1929, I believe, Auburn Speedster, which, if that car's legit, which it probably is if it's being paraded around like it was, that is probably a $1.2 million car because only 100 exist, or only 100 were ever built, and 8 are thought to exist. So that's a super rare car. If you were able to see it yesterday, you saw a piece of really cool Indiana history. That car was manufactured right here in Indiana. But moving on to the actual racing stuff, I will talk about Automobilia a little bit next week and talk about some of my favorite cars in a little more detail and why I love them. But last week, IndyCar announced on their social media pages that they have partnered with iRacing Studios to bring a standalone IndyCar video game title to consoles and PC in 2026. It was said in the press release that iRacing Studios will release an IndyCar title for PlayStation, Xbox, and Steam in the second half of 2026. The new product will mark the first dedicated IndyCar game in more than 2 decades since IndyCar Series 2005, which it's really weird that it's called IndyCar Series 2005 because it was released in 2004 and it's based off the 2003 season. So, honestly, that's peak IndyCar. But the last standalone game that was released was IndyCar Series 2005 for the PlayStation 2 and the original Xbox. Alongside this new IndyCar game, iRacing Studios is also preparing for the release of NASCAR 25 in about a month. I've seen some screenshots for that game. I'll probably do a run-through of it on the show after I play it because the game looks really good, and I want to see how different it truly is from NASCAR Heat, which actually, NASCAR Heat was not a bad game. NASCAR Heat was, at least the last 2 NASCAR Heat games, were actually very good to drive in. They felt, they didn't feel arcade-y. The cars didn't feel, abnormal. But iRacing, the stuff they make looks incredible. And they've also previously developed the World of Outlaws dirt racing games, which also look ridiculously cool. The announcement comes after years of drawn-out and fruitless back-and-forth bickering between IndyCar and a company called Motorsport Games. When IndyCar contracted that studio to release a game in 2023, nothing happened, and Motorsport Games then went bankrupt. They practically collapsed. It turned out to basically just be a Ponzi scheme funneling money to some random Russian oligarch. So that was kind of cool, I guess. No, it wasn't. But nothing happened through that entire period, but Motorsport Games still had the license to create an IndyCar game, even though they weren't creating anything, and they were being really, really stingy with that license. During that failed partnership, iRacing lost the IndyCar license because Motorsport Games had an exclusive one. iRacing made it a bannable offense to say the word IndyCar in race chat because Motorsport Games got too mad at them for not policing it. That's how dumb this got. And, like, Motorsport Games ended up spending more time policing online use of the word IndyCar than making an actual IndyCar game. And, like, the one thing that came out of that, there was, like, one screenshot and one bit of gameplay. It was awful. Like, it looked just terrible. Motorsport Games did do a pretty good job with Le Mans Ultimate, which is the official game of the 24 Hours of Le Mans. That game actually isn't that terrible. You know, that's what happens when you suffer financial collapse and bring in actual game developers to make a real video game instead of funneling money to Russian politicians. But that's not my realm of expertise. After Motorsport Games' partial financial collapse in 2023, IndyCar reunited with iRacing, and the existing licensing deal was restored. The new licensing deal that was announced with the game has been extended for at least 5 years. They said it's a long-term deal, so I'd imagine that's probably where the licensing agreement goes. It's probably 5 years or more, because IndyCar is one of the most popular, racing disciplines on iRacing. And it's something I really hope I can try out if I end up getting iRacing, but I'm not really in the mood to spend, $5,000 or whatever on a simulator at the moment. But during that failed partnership, iRacing lost the license. They had to take all the IndyCar names off of stuff, and they had Motorsport Games force them to make it a bannable offense to say the word IndyCar, which is just stupid. IndyCar reunited with iRacing at the end of 2023, and this new game deal also sees Indy Next cars that are integrated into the iRacing service, and a new long-term licensing agreement that I've already talked about. The development team was at the season finale at Nashville Superspeedway this past weekend, which is an awesome race, by the way. That's another thing I got to talk about next week, because this is basically last week's show. But modernized with the latest news. But the dev team was at the season finale in Nashville last weekend, and Scott McLaughlin has been brought on as a consultant for the dev team. I'm really excited. I kind of jumped out of my seat when I saw this come up on my Twitter feed. I was actually in radio when this happened, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have my show written already. I love when these stories come out. It falls right into my lap, and I have a whole lot to talk about. So I'm super excited because, again, there hasn't been an IndyCar game in my lifetime. There hasn't been an IndyCar game in 20 years. There have been games with IndyCars included. Project Cars 2 has a good model. Forza Motorsport 7's IndyCars are pretty good. The new Forza Motorsport just had IndyCars added a couple months ago, and those are actually very fun to drive. But having a dedicated game is going to allow for greater reach to younger audiences, because if you say, oh, you think these cars are cool, you can drive them on your, Xbox or whatever, that appeals to people. And that appeals to people more than you would think on your own. That's a big part of marketing that I'm really glad that Fox and IndyCar got done. And the great thing is, Doug Bowles walked into iRacing to talk about getting this game done 6 months ago. And iRacing already has enough of a foundation to announce that this game is going to happen next year. So, you bet your bottom dollar I am going to be all over this when it comes out in probably about 9 months or so. But I bet it's going to be really fun. iRacing does incredible game development. NASCAR 25 looks really good. The World of Outlaws games look really good. I really need to get my hands on some iRacing games to actually, truly try them out, because they just look wonderful, and I hope they drive the same too. I've heard a lot of positive things about NASCAR 25. I'll do a segment on that when it releases in about, what day is it? September 7th. It releases in about a month. 5-6 weeks, I think. But that's something I'm going to talk about when it comes out. If you want to know when I'm on, I am on live every single Sunday, hopefully, at 11:30 a.m. If you missed the show, you can go watch it on YouTube. I try and put it up on YouTube the same day. Sometimes I do, sometimes I'm not able to. It's kind of touch and go there. But if you want to watch a replay of the show because you missed a show, here's how you do it.
Want more racing news and highlights along with full show replays?
241.428 miles an hour.
Head over to the This Week in Racing YouTube channel so you never miss an episode of Cars and Coffee and highlights from your favorite racing series. Just go to youtube.com/@TWIRvids.
I've come up with a wonderful idea to do, well, I did, it was me and my dad, but I'm going to start doing beginner's guides for people who don't really know as much about racing as someone like me who does a radio show about it. I'm going to do beginner's guides on series like IndyCar, NASCAR, how to tell apart the 5 billion different classes of sports cars, that kind of thing, because my goal as a creator in this, niche sphere, whatever you want to call it, is to make racing more accessible for the regular person. And racing is a very complicated it's a very complicated sport. It's something that's very hard to wrap your head around, but when you do wrap your head around it, you get really into it. It kind of has like the characteristics of a cult following, but it's like the people who watch racing usually, Drive to Survive fans kind of fall outside of this bubble, but the people who watch racing, like diehard fans, people who watch, every series every week, such as myself, tend to know a lot about whatever series they are a fan of. And I want that information to be more accessible for regular people, so regular people can see what I love about this sport. You're listening to Cars and Coffee here on 91.3 WHJ. My name is Nathan Ward. We're going to take a quick song break. Here's Tin Man by America. When we come back, we're going to talk about HYPERCARS racing in the Asian Le Mans Series.
Don't go away. Cars and Coffee will be right back on 91.3 WHJE. Hi, if you're listening to this, that means you're listening to a replay of today's show. I just want to say thank you for listening and make sure to subscribe to the This Week in Racing YouTube channel so you never miss another episode of Cars and Coffee, along with highlights from your favorite motorsport series. If you're listening on the WHJE website, go to youtube.com/@TWIRvids. If you're listening to this on YouTube, just click the button below. Thank you so much for listening. Now, let's get back to the show. We now return to Cars and Coffee here on 91.3 WHJE.
Hello and welcome back to Cars and Coffee here on 91.3 WHJE. My name is Nathan Ward. In case you missed it, there was Formula One this morning, the Italian Grand Prix at Monza, one of my favorite tracks because it's basically just the power track. It's the closest Formula One has to an oval. And Max Verstappen has blown everyone out of the water because apparently they can take a whole lot more wing off of the Red Bull than McLaren was able to take off of their car. That Red Bull was absolutely rapid. He broke the track record in qualifying, set the fastest lap in Formula One history, and then just drove off into the sunset, very reminiscent of his dominant season in 2023. But aside from Formula One, I don't talk about sports cars much on this show, which is really a shame. I really should do that more. And today, I'm going to change that. So, for the 2026-2027 season, because the Asian Le Mans Series splits 2 calendar years for some odd reason, the Asian Le Mans Series will add the wildly successful hypercar class into its lineup. If you are unfamiliar with sports car racing, hypercar is the top class of purpose-built race cars that race in historic events like the 24 Hours of Le Mans and around the world in the FIA World Endurance Championship. So you have cars from brands like Toyota, Peugeot, Porsche, Ferrari, Alpine, which is basically Renault, if you've heard of Renault before, and Aston Martin, which, in my opinion, has the best sounding car. But the Asian Le Mans Series is kind of like the regional... It's a regional sub-series of the World Endurance Championship. So it takes place during the WEC's off-season, which allows a lot of drivers to keep their skills, to keep up on their skills during the winter, where there's a long break between the WEC race in Bahrain in November and the opening race in Qatar in February. That allows drivers to be, tip-top shape year-round and still get to drive cars. But the top class for the Asian Le Mans Series are LMP2 cars, which is one step below hypercar. LMP2 cars are more catered to gentleman drivers. So guys that usually are older, this isn't their main source of income. Like, say, Ben Keating. He's a lifelong sports car fan. He owns a car dealership in Texas, but he drives sports cars here in America in the IMSA Championship. Driving race cars is not his full-time job. He sells cars during the day, or during the week. And then he races with, I think it's TF Sport, the Corvette team, every IMSA weekend. So that's pretty cool. He's also in the WEC. But what LMP2 is, it's catered to a less experienced group of drivers. And what adding Hypercar does to the Asian Le Mans Series is it allows professional drivers to gain seats, but also the quirk about adding Hypercars here is that a bronze-rated driver has to be in the lineup. So I'll talk about what bronze-rated drivers mean in just a second, but the Asian Le Mans Series is the first ACO, that's the organizing or the sanctioning body of the World Endurance Championship. They have 3 sub-series: the European Le Mans Series, the Asian Le Mans Series, and the Michelin Le Mans Cup. They all have slightly different class structures, and they all go to different tracks. A lot of teams do all 3 in different kinds of cars. A lot of teams just do Europe and Asia in, say, an LMP2 car. But the thing is, the Asian Le Mans Series is the first ACO sub-series to add hypercars to their lineup. Stefan Rattel, who's been in this business for, I don't even know. He's been in the business of organizing sports car events since the 90s, at least. He's president of the SRO Motorsports Group, which co-promotes the series along with the ACO. He said that the hypercar class in Asia will be able to succeed because there are a lot of Asian gentleman drivers, a lot of amateur drivers from China, Japan, India, that part of the world. Malaysia has a very very unrecognized car culture, honestly. But that part of the world has so many gentleman drivers that are looking to get into the top level of endurance racing alongside whatever they do as their day job. Rattel thinks that the hypercar class will be able to succeed, but the problem is, the reason that the hypercar class is so, fruitful in WEC is because they're all manufacturer-backed teams. Porsche has Team Penske, Peugeot has their own team, Ferrari fields their own cars. Aston Martin has the Heart of Racing, which if you've ever played the video game Team Fortress 2, the guy who created Team Fortress 2, the gaming platform Steam, guy named Gabe Newell, he is a part owner of that race team. So I will, as a bit of a screen addict myself, I will root for Heart of Racing. Also, the car sounds incredible. But the Asian Le Mans Series hypercar class will be required to have 1 bronze-rated driver in its lineup. So the FIA has 4 rankings of driver, you call it skill. They have 4 rankings of driver skill. Bronze drivers are either rookies or drivers that don't do this full time, drivers that aren't, amateurs. They're amateurs. Racing isn't their main source of income. People like Ben Keating, which I talked about earlier. Silver drivers are rookies that are going through the ladder, maybe slightly more inexperienced, but they're still very quick. Gold drivers are the best of the best that aren't part of a factory organization. Like, say, I don't have a direct example with me, like in terms of an actual driver, but gold-rated drivers are they're top brass, metal joke. They're top brass of the people who aren't signed up to exclusive contracts with manufacturers. And then a step above that are platinum drivers. Drivers that are contracted to a manufacturer that race for that manufacturer's factory teams across the world. So Ferrari, you have drivers like James Calado. Like, if, say, Lewis Hamilton did a race in a Ferrari sports car, he'd be a platinum driver. One, because of his experience in other racing series, and two, because he has a direct contract with a manufacturer. So the class is more focused on customer lineups or customer entries than manufacturer-backed ones. Manufacturer-backed ones are actually banned from entering. So the Penske Porsches won't be allowed an entry, but say JDC Miller Motorsports, which runs that bright yellow Porsche in IMSA, which IMSA is here at Indianapolis in 2 weeks. I'll talk about that next week. They will be allowed in because they aren't backed by Porsche. They are a customer that just buys the car and runs it themselves and maybe leases some Porsche factory drivers here and there. But the main point of contention between the teams and the sanctioning body is the fact that the champion of the class is not yet guaranteed an automatic invite to the next year's 24 Hours of Le Mans. So how the only reason that series like the European and Asian Le Mans series are popular is because if your team is the champion team of, say, if you're the LMP2 champion in the Asian Le Mans series, you get an automatic invite to the next 24 Hours of Le Mans. You get a spot reserved for you if you want to take it. That's very lucrative for someone running a hypercar because hypercars are expensive. At the moment, that's not guaranteed, which I find a very strange situation for such a popular class, and also something that I bet the ACO would want to have more of at their races, because those are the cars that people want to go to Le Mans and see. They want to see these, weird-looking Peugeots that look like they don't have wings and they didn't have wings at one point, and they want to see the latest and greatest in technology being showcased at the front of the field at Le Mans, and having more of them just makes sense. But it baffles me that this class that's going to come in a couple years is not going to be given an invite, at least at the moment. You still got 2 years. You've still got 2 years to add more garages at Le Mans, make the pit lane longer, that kind of stuff. But it's just strange. But the president of the ACO, a guy named Pierre Fillon, predicts only 2 to 3 entries for the debut season of HYPERCARS in Asia, which, again, hypercars are expensive. I'd take 3 entries, honestly, because hypercar racing is actually very competitive, and I think a 3-car race would actually not be terrible. Rattel is a little more optimistic, mostly citing the quote from Fillon, where he was asked if smaller brands that were former entrants in the World Endurance Championship would be allowed to compete. So, I don't know. So you have, a brand like Porsche. They are a major auto manufacturer. They manufacture and distribute cars for the entire world. For a group like Glickenhaus, for example, which did build a Le Mans hypercar at some point until it got too expensive and then they stopped the program, they are what I call a boutique brand. They don't manufacture, thousands of road cars per year for the general public. They are very exclusive with their customers, and they are very exclusive with how many cars they actually build. Part of that's money. Part of that is increasing prestige. Like, if you own a Glickenhaus road car, you're doing pretty well. Pierre Fillon was asked if those cars would be allowed to compete in the Asian Le Mans series, and he said, why not? The only requirement there is that they will be allowed to have a bronze driver, or that they will be required to have a bronze driver. So, looking at the potential entries, I have 6 of them that are theoretical possibilities for the Asian Le Mans Series, not counting, customer teams that could, pop out of nowhere. I'm thinking existing teams that could go over and it have no effect on the rest of their schedule. The least likely of those options is the AF Corsa customer Ferrari. If you watch the World Endurance Championship, you will see 3 Ferraris racing in hypercar. 2 of them are red, 1 of them is yellow. The yellow car is not a factory-backed car. It kind of is, but it kind of isn't. It's really weird. It's technically a customer car, but theoretically, that car would be allowed to race in the Asian Le Mans Series, but they really don't have a reason to, because they're already in the WEC. I don't really see them wanting to downgrade to a series where you only get into Le Mans, and Le Mans only, if you are champion of the series. It just doesn't make sense, but I have them on the list anyway. Another team that has been, sniffing around the expansion into hypercar is AO Racing. If you've ever seen that green Porsche that's painted like a T-Rex, that's AO Racing. They are probably the most fun sports car team to root for at the moment because they've got Rexy, that green Porsche. They've got Spike, the purple LMP2 car that's painted like a dragon. People have been joking about them buying a Porsche 963 hypercar and painting it a shark, or like painting it to look like a shark and naming it Carl, which I am all for Carl the Shark. AO Racing, that would make sense because they have a bronze driver. Their team owner, PJ Hyatt, wants to drive a hypercar. That makes sense as an entry. Baikala's racing team with the Van Wall Fever Dream. I don't even know, dude. Like, that's a weird car. That car was not competitive in WEC. It's not a major brand, so it can't compete in IMSA. That's another thing. IMSA requires you to build 2,500 road cars a year to be a registered manufacturer, which for teams like Glickenhaus and Van Wall, that means they can't compete because they don't make enough road cars. So Baikala's racing team could, in theory, be eligible with their old WEC car that they haven't been allowed onto the grid. There's the Glickenhaus, which I talked about earlier, and then there's the Isotta Fraschini, which I think is a fabric company. Like, it was a car company in, like, the 1920s. It stopped making cars for, like, 90 years, and then it pops up with a hypercar for 1 year, and then it leaves. Very weird story that I might have to look at in a future show. I'm going to start doing more history stuff, so that, you never know what kind of ideas you come up with when you're going off on tangents. That's kind of the classic motto of the show. When I was in here freshman year with Oliver Mason and Kyle Conley, we constantly went on tangents and then discovered, oh, wait, we should talk about this. So honestly, that's kind of a good thing for me when I go off on tangents because I have more stuff to talk about. I have more interesting ideas to dive into and explain to this audience that I have. With the World Endurance Championship grid more or less sold out due to the large number of factory hypercar efforts and the limited pit boxes at some tracks, the president of Le Mans Endurance Management believes that the Asian Le Mans Series could be a logical destination for privateers that want to run hypercars, but they can't make it into the World Endurance Championship. And hopefully that means the Asian Le Mans Series can expand to more tracks beyond the 3 they go to. Because I really love that series. And it's fun. It's small and it's fun. But there are no plans to introduce hypercar to the European Le Mans Series because, again, the WEC kind of fills that function at the moment. So that's something to think about. But I'm excited to add hypercars to another part of the world that really doesn't see that much endurance racing. Like, Asia has Super GT. They have whatever in the world China's doing. I don't really know what their racing ladder looks like. They have GT World Challenge. They have a couple other things, but they don't really get hypercars. The 2 races that the WEC does in Asia are in Japan at Mount Fuji and in Bahrain, which is, way out there, West Asia. So like East Asia, where most of these tracks are that the Asian Le Mans Series goes to, they are kind of deprived of these top-class cars that everyone else around the world is getting to experience, and it's great that more people are going to get to experience them, because I just love these cars. You're listening to Cars and Coffee here on 91.3 WHJ. My name is Nathan Ward. We will be right back. We're going to take a quick song break. This is Sultans of Swing by Dire Straits.
Don't go away. Cars and Coffee will be right back on 91.3 WHJE. Hi, if you're listening to this, that means you're listening to a replay of today's show. I just want to say thank you for listening, and make sure to subscribe to the This Week in Racing YouTube channel so you never miss another episode of Cars and Coffee, along with highlights from your favorite motorsport series. If you're listening on the WHJE website, go to youtube.com/@TWIRvids. If you're listening to this on YouTube, just click the button below. Thank you so much for listening. Now, let's get back to the show. We now return to Cars and Coffee here on 91.3 WHJE.
Welcome back to Cars and Coffee here on 91.3 WHJ. My name is Nathan Ward. That was Sultans of Swing by Dire Straits, one of my favorite guitar songs. Like, even as a drummer, that's a fun drum song. This is our last segment of the day. We're going to talk about some more IndyCar stuff. That's kind of my forte here. That's what I watch the most. The 2026 IndyCar schedule is not yet finalized, and it's probably far from finalized, but the first half of the season is starting to take shape. Many sources have reported throughout the past week that the opening month of the season in March will have 4 races as opposed to just 2 this past season. The provisional March schedule at the moment is as follows. They'll open the season at St. Petersburg as usual, but they will have a new companion, the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series. That race will be chaos, I already know, because the driving standards in the Truck Series are not the best. And I think if you ask any NASCAR fan, they'll kind of agree. It's Corey Haim at the top, and then everybody else is like all the way down at the bottom. Like, it's Corey Haim's running away with it, and if he loses the championship, I will forever bag on the NASCAR playoff system. Same thing if Connor Zilisch ends up losing the championship, but I don't think that's likely. The next week, it seems like, this is rumored, this isn't really confirmed. The next week after that, it looks like they'll be headed to Phoenix Raceway for the first time since 2018 as a Saturday night doubleheader with NASCAR. So that's the NASCAR Cup weekend where they're at Phoenix. They will, in theory, be after the Xfinity race, but I don't know how that's going to work, and honestly, with it being a NASCAR weekend and NASCAR choosing what gets promoted, I'm not sure this is going to go well. I love that they're going to an oval. I just don't think they've picked the right one, and I don't think they've... I like Phoenix. I don't think they've done this the right way, if this is real, if this is a real rumor. March 15th is the inaugural Arlington Grand Prix, which is going to be in the parking lot of the Cowboys Stadium and the Rangers Stadium. It's going to be in like the Dallas Sports Park, wherever thing. It's just outside Dallas. But yes, it's a parking lot race. It looks like the Miami Grand Prix, but I really like it, and I really think it's going to work because that's a big part of the country. That's a lot of people, and I think you can get a lot of people exposed to IndyCar if you do this event correctly. And then at the end of the month, the Barber Motorsports Park race in Alabama, which is usually at the end of April or the first week of May, that has been moved up to March. And we only know that because it got leaked by the Porsche Sprint Challenge series, a series that I don't think anybody watches. But that they leaked their schedule, or they put out their schedule saying, "Oh yeah, we're going to be partnering with IndyCar at Barber Motorsports Park on March 27th," and they're like, "Oh, apparently that's happening." Despite increasing concerns that the negotiations to race in Mexico City next year may be falling apart, IndyCar representatives have told the media that negotiations are going well, and all other venues besides Iowa and the Thermal Club are expected to be retained next season. There's still a small chance that the series runs one race at Iowa since the track rental deal apparently runs through next year. That's what I've heard on Twitter, but I don't know how accurate that is, but I think the track rental deal runs until next year. It's still unlikely to happen. I don't think they're going to go back to Iowa after the absolute disaster of a promotion that they had this year. The biggest schedule announcement of the last few days has been the relocation of IndyCar's sole trip to Canada, since Exhibition Place in downtown Toronto, like lakeside downtown Toronto, will host games for the 2026 World Cup around the time of the usual IndyCar race in Toronto. An alternative venue has been sought out by IndyCar and the race organizers. Next year, the race will move to a street circuit in downtown Markham, Ontario, about 19 miles northeast of Toronto. The circuit runs through Markham Town Center and is roughly 2.2 miles with 12 turns. Markham is in a booming part of Canada, and the race is set to stay there for many years to come. I think it's a 5-year deal at least. Potentially signaling the end of the historic IndyCar event at Exhibition Place, which had been on the schedule since 1986, with 3 exceptions: 2008 because of the Champ Car IndyCar reunification, and 2020 and 21 due to COVID. It's kind of... I'm mixed on Toronto, honestly. On one hand, the track in Markham looks really good. I think it could produce really good racing. It's kind of a wacky track if you look it up in terms of its shape. But I think this event has a chance to do well, and I'm just glad it's not at the currently being demolished Markham Airport. On the other hand, I really hate to see Exhibition Place go, not from a racing standpoint, because the races there were meh, but from a history standpoint. That's a through and through kart race. And I hate to see it go, but part of me thinks we need to modernize a little bit. And I think having the World Cup kind of kick us out gave us a kickstart to look for a new venue. I like Markham. Track looks good, as I said. I think you can pull in a lot of people. Markham's growing really fast, and honestly, there's not much going on there at the moment, so the city looking for new events is kind of a sign that, hey, the people want something here to do. So I think there would be really good turnout for this, and maybe for a crowd that doesn't necessarily get to experience IndyCar. Because Markham relative to Toronto is kind of like how Westfield is to Indianapolis. It's kind of out there. It's a small-ish city that's growing fast. That is a satellite of a major city that's been with more historic significance. That's how I make the comparison here. I understand, I live in Westfield. I go to the 500 every year. That's the commute almost if you live in Markham and you're going to the IndyCar race in Toronto. But again, unlike Indianapolis, Toronto is not a big event for IndyCar. It's not super notable like the 500 is. Nothing compares to the 500. But for Markham, it's great for the city. It's great for the people there that get to experience something new that I bet a lot of the people there have not been able to go to Toronto and see the IndyCar race. But if it's like right in their backyard, they can make the whole week about it. It can be a whole town thing, and I think that's really cool. I'm excited for this. New track's always good. This is a street circuit that I am actually very fond of, looking at it on paper. I'm not sure how it will race. There are some parts of it that are going to need to be widened because they are quite narrow. But really, I'm excited about this. This is overall, this schedule-related off-season, or like when we talk about the venues that IndyCar will go to next year, this has been a far more positive off-season when it comes to new races, because the last couple years have just been full of people complaining to Penske of like, oh, why don't you go back to Texas? Oh, why don't you do anything cool anymore? It's all street race, street race, street race. I'm not the biggest fan of replacing everything with street race. I actually don't like the idea of replacing a bunch of races with street races, but the 2 street races that IndyCar has come up with in the past year look really, really appealing. I wouldn't fill the entire schedule with them, but making all of the street races more appealing because it's the most accessible for the common fan, that's a good thing. St. Petersburg, record crowd this year. Detroit, I'm not sure what the crowd numbers are, and honestly, I don't think Detroit's going to last till the end of the decade because they're going to demolish the Renaissance Center where the circuit is, so they're going to have to either move the track again or go somewhere else. Psst, Michigan International Speedway. They're going to have to go somewhere else because they're going to demolish the Renaissance Center, which is a stupid decision because the Renaissance Center is cool, but that's, again, outside my realm of expertise. But the street circuits that they've added or refreshed, they're attracting crowds. St. Pete's attracting crowds. I think Detroit had a good crowd this year. It looked pretty good on TV. What's the other one? Long Beach. Long Beach had a record crowd this year. Long Beach is very easily the second crown jewel race. So Long Beach having crowd increases is great. St. Pete having crowd increases for the beginning of the season is awesome. Super positive all around for IndyCar at the moment. I think if you can get this Phoenix deal done and you can do it correctly, you have a good schedule. Again, the one thing it's missing, and I will keep saying this until they add another super speedway, you need to go to another super speedway. That's the fast racing. That's the racing that people like. Look at the 500. If you can replicate that somewhere else, like go to Pocono. Pocono is an independently owned track. You don't have NASCAR breathing down your neck. And the Cup race sold out. Like there was like a 2-mile long line trying to get into the track halfway through the race. Like the crowd is there. 1/3 of the U.S. population lives within 300 miles of that track. You have to take advantage of that. You just have to. That's if you do it right, it's free money. That's my only thing that I think IndyCar could do better is add one more super speedway, and I think you have a very, very good schedule, very good mixture of tracks in very attractive markets. I hear Mexico is probably going to happen. I think that's another race that if you do it right, it's basically free money because you can pack that place with 200,000 Pato Award fans. I think Mexico could be done well. If you go to Denver could be done well because that's a market that really doesn't have any racing at the moment. NASCAR's not there. That's something you need to take advantage of. You need to go to places where NASCAR isn't. I don't want the mindset of the series trying to be NASCAR or trying to do the same things F1 is doing. No, you need to be unique. You need to go to places where F1 and NASCAR are not going, and you need to make your own event. You need to make that event special. And I think that's what IndyCar is doing. That's what they're drifting towards, and I'm very happy that this turnaround is happening. Fox they had an amazing season when it comes to broadcasting. The Nashville season finale had a wonderful TV number. I will talk about that again next week. But overall, I am very happy with IndyCar at the moment. The only thing is super speedway and man, we need a new car. But those are things that the new cars being worked on. I don't know what the super speedway situation is, but that's it for this week's episode of Cars and Coffee. Next week, we will talk about some really serious IndyCar silly season moves. Drivers have moved out of the sport. Existing drivers have moved around to fresh places. We're going to talk about the Lone Star Le Mans, which is today on, I believe if you have Motor Trend, you can watch the entire race from Circuit of the Americas if you are into them sporty cars. NASCAR is at Worldwide Technology Raceway today. IndyCar is done for the season, which is unfortunate, but you can't compete with the NFL, and it's game day. So, thank you for listening to Cars and Coffee here on 91.3 WHJ. My name is Nathan Ward. This is The Pretender by Jackson Brown. I'm going to go watch the Colts.